from a nitty gritty point of view, because I must know this, how many hours a day can you actually narrate without going around the bend?
6 to 7. It's a full day. And I often have people ask me that, like, how can you talk for that long? I'm like, the instrument is pretty pliable. It's not the instrument, it's the brain.
So the brain gives out before the voice does, is what you're saying.
With me, it does.
Yeah, I find that my brain gives out before my hand does when I'm writing. So that
Right.
makes sense.
Now, did any publisher ever ask you if you wanted to narrate one of your books?
No, I think with Cleopatra, I think I must have read a section of it for the sales reps. And I'm not sure because of that or for any other reason, it was always decided that it should be a professional reader.
Some historians, specifically David McCullough, who turned out to just be a wonderful narrator. He did, the complete narration to the Civil War documentary. I think of him almost on the level with Edward Harriman.
Yeah, I mean, David had, I think, every gift. I mean, that deep baritone voice was the voice of American histoy for so many years.
Yeah.
So I think, no one else could have read those pages with that authority. I think he could have, recited the instructions for, how to unpackage the breakfast cereal with authority.
There was a history book recently narrated by the author. And I got to say, I grimaced through the whole thing. I really wanted to hear it because it's wonderfully written.
So it was a flatness, or it was sort of, it's funny because you'd think a flatness.
Extreme flatness.
Interesting.
And I, of course, and this is almost a curse, after narrating for so long, when I listen to something, I'm re-narrating in my head.
I was saying about I'm rewriting as I read, right? It's the same thing. Yeah. You're basically saying is that there's a performance of a book and then there's a reading of a book, and they're two different creatures, really.
At least, within each sentence is an operative word or a couple of operative words. And they need to be stressed in a certain way without overdoing it to lead people and listeners in the right way. And then, in quotes, when there's just no variation, whatsoever, you just start to long for it, which is our argument, as we all, all narrators are up in arms now about the coming of AI narration.
Well, most writers feel the same way, right? Since we're both of us on the front lines to be replaced here. Yes.
Yeah, I just don't see how AI will ever get to the point that is going to, deliver a thriller with 20 different characters, where you have a villain and a good guy, and, all of those need the imperfect human voice to sound human.
I do think that most of it tends to be in the nuances, and that is, at least so far, the thing that is escaping AI.
Actors learn to appreciate mistakes that they make, when things go a little bit wrong and you stay with it, and something really alive happens. The famous story of when, on the waterfront, when Eva Marie Saint dropped her glove and Marlon Brando picks it up and puts it on and plays with it. And, it's this indelible, cinematic moment.
I just heard the music version of that, which was a famous conductor saying to a pianist, you don't have to play all the right notes, but you have to play the wrong notes well.
Right. Or in jazz, I forget who the jazz man was, says, if you hit the wrong note, if you hit it twice, then it's not a mistake. So just be consistent with it.
Do you have a preference between reading fiction and reading nonfiction?
I think I really like fiction.
You don't have to think about what was this voice in actuality. Did this person have an accent?
You have a lot more latitude, but you got to really read the book from beginning to end when you prep, because people have run into real surprises where they get down to the last chapter and he said in his rather thick brogue, like, what? Oh my, what'll I do now? Either cut that line out or re-record the whole thing. Fiction keeps you on your toes, and because of the shifts between characters and, the highs and lows of it, especially if it's good, I feel like I'm just more fully there.
Well, you have the plot, which is obviously a binding agent to some extent.
But in a good nonfiction book, like the one we're talking about, that's a very definite plot. You know, when you think about how, you know, the creation of our country came down to these few guys, you know, in a chess game with each other, you know, it's like a movie. And it almost didn't happen, you know. That's the other amazing thing. You know, we think of our country as inevitable, and
Right.
and it so isn't.
Well, that was one of the reasons I wanted to write the book, to remind us that it's, you know, it's such a winding fits and starts business, and it's by no means preordained, obviously, which is the trick always in writing history, is to inject that level of improbability and uncertainty into it, right? We all know what happens, but you want the reader to live in suspense of not knowing for as many pages as you can possibly pull it off.
I'm so happy this all it worked out so felicitously.
I can't tell you how delighted I am to have those words in your voice. I mean,
Thank you so much. Now,
thanks.
I was noticing on your bibliography, it's about 5 years between each project.
Yeah.
Any idea about what's next?
I have an idea. I'm not sure it's what I'll do. It's usually the front runner turns out to be the one I end up diving into, but just because I've been on the road so much, I haven't really been able to dig in.
Let it be a masculine figure that I can
Let it be in the voice of Jason Culp is all I can say.
Okay.
Thanks so much for doing this.